Let's check our sounds. Are we live?
Huh? Yep, we're live.
All right, perfect. How do we sound? Is someone too loud or too quiet? Are we good to go?
You sound pretty good.
Perfect. All right. This took a little too long, but hi everyone. Welcome once again to 2K Weekly. This is episode 2 of this ongoing series where we go through the 2KU results from the TaipeiJoey Discord server, and we go over the best moments as well as some other juicy stuff. I'm TaipeiJoey101, and with me is my co-host Danny V. And
Hello, hello.
yeah, this week's been a little hectic, and to reflect that, this preparation for the stream has been quite hectic. Uh, Danny, anything you want to shout out from this week?
Yeah, there's a bunch of big teams that we should shout out, some surprise teams, and a bunch of little upsets. So, all get ready.
I hope any of you watching right now tuned in yesterday to watch the 2KU Saturdays, where Louisville edged out a win over Indiana. We'll talk about that real quick while we talk about our top stories. The rushing game got completely flatlined for the Hoosiers. As they lost 34-27. Not a lot more lopsided the first half, but they managed to plow their way back through. A close game out west. Stanford, the number one team in the country, in spite of the close score, had a great defensive showing against BYU. 31-28, the final score there. We'll talk about that a little more in depth later. Kansas State losing on the road as the number 7 team. This Purdue team got some big upset in them. Number 10 Oregon beating Florida State 52-42 in the Louisiana kickoff. The victory bell saw the Miami Redhawks take down Cincinnati 27-20, and a close game out in Atlanta, Tennessee beating the Syracuse Orange 28-23. That's just a taste of what we have to offer, Danny.
Yeah, we got a lot of big stories this week. Week 1 was just pure chaos.
Yeah. Very much reflecting week 0 as we saw. Let's take a look at the first score. This was on Thursday. Wyoming heading down to the Rubber Bowl to take on Akron. And not a tremendously remarkable game for Wyoming. However, I want to point your attention to two things. First off, the first game for Hector Boyer, head coach of Akron. He came here from NFL Europe. He was signed from the Hamburg Sea Devils, and he performed very well as their debut head coach. And I want to also shout out Keith Watkins, the true freshman making his first NCAA start, 25 for 39, 213 yards and 2 touchdowns. Great performance there, Danny.
Yeah, Wyoming was the better team, but Akron did put up a hell of a fight for all the changes they're having.
Mm-hmm. If anything, this Akron team shows a huge refresher from last year's squad. Let's head down to Mobile for Southern Miss, heading down there after a rocky season last year. They're hoping to right the ship this year, and a big win against South Alabama is the way to do it. Anthony Cook was 19 for 25, 202 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day with 2 picks. Marvin James got 170 yards and a touchdown. Derek Cummings got 95 yards and a touchdown of his own. Quarterback Ben Moyer for USA got 193 yards and was 18 for 35. Linebacker Brandon Rice for South Alabama had 2 sacks and a pick. Danny?
Yeah, Southern Miss was really the better team and a good way for them to start off, especially how disastrous last year was. So
Definitely.
it'll be very good for them.
Let's head let's head up to Kinnick Stadium in Iowa City. The Hawkeyes, not a truly disappointing season last year, but given a lot of hype they built up, they want to take the next step. A 38-16 win over a very good Northern Iowa team is definitely the way to do it. As we look at the stats, How about the kicking game for Sam Taylor? 5 for 5, including 2 from 40 plus. You and I had you and I total rushing 55, 55 attempts and 205 yards total. Did not get in the end zone once though. Testament to this rush defense for Iowa, Danny.
Yeah, that Iowa has a tradition of struggling against Missouri Valley teams, so for them to have this big dominant win, especially a very good Northern Iowa team, it's quite impressive for Iowa.
Yeah, Iowa competing out of a very tough and competitive Big Ten Legends division. You have to watch out for teams like Michigan, Minnesota, Notre Dame, and even some smaller teams like Michigan State and Northwestern. Let's head to Ypsilanti. Not a On paper doesn't seem like a very interesting game. Nebraska Omaha, this is their debut in the FBS as they join the Missouri Valley. Eastern Michigan, another team looking to correct some wrongs from last year. Quarterback Pat Johnson for the Eagles had 265 yards and 30 rushing yards as well. Brian Clemens for the Eagles had 2 touchdowns. And the EMU defense, 7 sacks and a pick. Danny?
Yeah, that for Nebraska Omaha's first game as an FBS team, it was pretty impressive for them at least, I'd say.
A lot of shakeup in the MVC this year. Here, let's head to Atlanta for the Chick-fil-A kickoff of number 19 Syracuse, number 23 Tennessee. 28-23 the final score. A very close game, and the game winner came from wide receiver Ray Fontaine, who caught the game-winning touchdown from Jermaine Alvarez. As nothing to be disappointed of for the Syracuse team, especially led by Matt Taylor. But it was a great game, and only one team could win it. Danny?
Yeah, that it is very disappointing for the Big East to lose, especially with this Syracuse team that was supposed to be one of their better teams. But Tennessee, they're off to a great start, and let's see off the rest of the way.
You lagged a little bit there, but the best team. But Tennessee has the potential to become the best team in the SEC, especially after there was a pretty rough stretch of time for the SEC last year. You're especially seeing an 11-win Florida lose in the conference title game to LSU. Let's head down to South Carolina for an ACC Sun Belt matchup. App State gets a big upset win on the road, though not really an upset, over South Carolina. 29-16 the final score. Or John Hagan for the Mountaineers was 20 for 40, 333 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Joe Jenkins caught a touchdown and had 102 yards passing. 5 for 6 was David Graham, including a 43-yarder. Danny?
Yeah, that it was a big upset for App State. I mean, they're going on the road to a Power 5 program and winning, so that's a very good sign for them. And let's hope South Carolina can improve.
Yeah, they ended up last year they were 4-8. It was not a great year for them. Let's head to a surprising game in Amherst. 56-48 for BC and UMass. This went to 3 overtimes. And a big game for the Minutemen. And Wesley Hayes had 289 yards rushing as a quarterback. 2 touchdowns through the air for Jonathan Espinoza. Cole Pendleton got 2 rushing touchdowns as well. And a commendable effort for the Eagles as well. Mark Jackson had 4 rushing touchdowns on the day. And this BC team going home with another heartbreaking loss. We remember how their season ended last year, right, Danny?
Yeah. Last year they ended off with a very, very close loss to Florida State, and here they are in a close loss. Dave Show.
Got your spear helmets mixed up. Let's head to Marlins Park in Miami. FIU taking on the Hurricanes. Another big win for the Sun Belt over the ACC. FIU's Gerald Clayton was 19 for 32, 247 yards and a touchdown. Javon Smith had a 52-yard rush on the day. And how about even though in a losing effort, that might be a typo. I believe that's actually 99 yards for Nick Burnett through the air. You saying?
And that this was a good big rivalry game, especially in the city of Miami. And props to FIU, the little brother overcomes the big brother, and the Sun Belt is proven to be the Fun Belt this year.
Yeah, a lot of fun to come. I'll definitely a team you'll also have to look out for, though we won't be talking to them in this episode. That's FAU out of the Sun Belt. I didn't skip any. Let's head to the Superdome in New Orleans. Florida State taking on the Oregon Ducks. Not an overtime game like the UMass Boston College game, but a 52-42 good showing nonetheless from both teams. Terrence Noel, the running back for Oregon, had 197 yards and 4 touchdowns, the longest being 69 yards. Ryan Henderson had an 85-yard punt return today. And how about Florida State? It can't hold on to the lead. They were up 21-7 at the end of the first. Where did it all go wrong, Danny?
Yeah, that basically Florida State choked the game. They could have had a big upset and a big momentum swing for their program, but shame it had to go down like this.
Florida State played in the ACC title game last year. They finished the year 8-6 after a series of brutal losses. And we head up to Yager Stadium in Oxford, Ohio. The battle for the victory bell. Cincinnati has not won this game. On the road in 13 years. 27-20 the final score. Rob Griffin for Cincy gave a great effort. But the big thing was Justin Ransom's go-ahead run with 4 minutes and 29 seconds remaining. He was 22 for 31 with 334 yards, 2 touchdowns, as well as another touchdown rushing. A big statement win for Miami of Ohio, who have a certain monkey on their back after last year, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that this was a big upset for Miami because Cincinnati was supposed to be one of the better teams in the CUSA. So for them to have this big monumental win is very impressive for them.
Mm-hmm. People probably don't remember Miami, Ohio finishing with 10 wins in the regular season. They ended the season 10-4, or they would have had an 11th win, and they could have even had a 12th win. And they want to get back on that podium because there's a certain other MAC school that they're contending with. Let's head to Colorado, Denver, and Mile High Stadium for the Rocky Mountain Showdown. Colorado, big statement win over Colorado State. They want to prove to themselves that they are still a contender in the Big 12. They finished 9-4 last year, but they're trying to finish even better this year. The rushing game was the big name for the Buffaloes. Jason Palmer had 267 yards on the ground, and with 88 yards and 3 touchdowns was running back number 46, Alan Hubbard. I want to shout out Colorado State. They had some pretty good efforts as well. Kevin Poole had 3 sacks, and I also want to shout out a little wide receiver for Colorado State. His name might be familiar to you. His name is Michael Jackson. No relation, of course, but he had 3 receptions, 91 yards, and a 72-yard touchdown. Colorado State had a very rocky year here last year, but both teams hope they can either jump from this momentum or recover from this loss. Danny?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very rocky year for these Rocky Mountain teams last year, and you gotta believe that Colorado State's head coach is probably gonna be on the hot seat very soon.
Yeah, definitely a fear for this team. How about a big upset in West Lafayette? The Kansas State Jayhawks head on the road to take on Purdue. Big mistake. You never want to let your guard down in Ross-Ade, and not against this Purdue team of all teams. James Simmons, quarterback for the Boilermakers, was 21 for 31, 240 yards with a touchdown. Joe Sharp had a 41-yard run and 98 yards total. Well, and an interesting stat for Purdue: they haven't lost a home opener since 2016. Meanwhile, K-State, it all kind of fell apart for them. They were held scoreless in the second half. Clint Massey had 46 yards. But there was a rush touchdown for quarterback Terrence Noble, who had 78 passing yards as well. And Kansas State, you just hope that they can pick the pieces back up next week, right?
Yeah, and that especially how Kansas State has this big game against Army next week. It's going to be very big, and Purdue still having their magical touch.
Mm-hmm. You never want to let your guard down, and the schedule's not going to get any easier for Kansas State, especially being in the Big 12. Heading out west, this was a potential game of the week. We were thinking about covering this one for 2KU Saturdays, but we ended up with the neutral site IU and Louisville game. But BYU Stanford, number one team in the country, proving why they're number one in a close game, but a dominant performance by the defense. That is 8 sacks. You read that right. 8 sacks and 2 interceptions on BYU quarterback Jesse Reed, who had a good game of his own, 22 for 36, 333 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Wide receiver Charlie Weeks had a touchdown and 92 yards off of 5 receptions. Quarterback Marvin Walker for Stanford was 24 for 38, 289 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And this game came down to the wire. The last score came from wide receiver Tyler Arnold of the Cardinal, who got the go-ahead score with 4:06 remaining. And Stanford, if this BYU team couldn't take them down, I think the only other team that stands a great chance would be that Oregon Ducks team they have later on the year, Danny.
Yeah, and for battling against the number one team, BYU held their own, and we're going to definitely see a lot more of them. And they have a lot of big competition in their schedule, so they could be a potential upset bringer.
Definitely so. I believe that wraps up the scores. So, no, we have one more. Heading out west, or technically out east, to Boise, the Blue Turf. It's the Governor's Trophy between the Broncos and the Vandals. Well, Idaho has not beaten Boise since 2013, and unfortunately that streak's going to continue. 65-13, the final score. Good performances still from quarterback Andre Smith, who was 20-29, 266 yards, and a touchdown. Those 2 interceptions loom large, especially combined with the 3 sacks that Boise's defense had. Big performance for Javari Johnson of Boise State. 30 attempts with 152 yards and 4 touchdowns. Cameron Yates, the quarterback for BSU, had 3 touchdowns of his own and 463 yards. All right, Danny?
Yeah, that this was just a blowout, and we hope that Idaho can get back on the right track, but just Boise State was just too dominant.
Idaho had a good year last year, so I definitely expect to see the Vandals in some capacity soon, as we'll go through the other scores through this week. A good win for Coastal Carolina, a close win for Western Illinois on the road against Ball State, and Indiana State pulling away from Eastern Illinois. If you don't have anything to say, I can move on.
Yeah, keep on going. I'll get some more stuff to say later on.
Yeah, we got the Friday scores. Northern Iowa beating at UNI. Eastern Michigan getting past Nebraska. Omaha, Cullen Payton destroying Chicago on the road in the FBS debut for the Maroons. Central Michigan getting a win on the road against South Dakota State. Pacific winning 17-7 over Missouri State. Stephen F. Austin blowing out the Drake Bulldogs. And James Madison coming close to beating the Delaware Blueheads, but not enough. Ohio got a 13-0 win over Dartmouth. There are a lot more games here. I'll skim through the results, at least for now. We had a couple upsets that went under the radar. East Carolina edging one out over NC State. A close game for Baylor, but they get past the Auburn Tigers. Texas, 38-22 over the Ohio State Buckeyes on the road. Notre Dame getting a big win over Navy. Georgia winning 38-13 in Arlington over the Bruins. UNC getting close with Charlotte, but managing to pull away. An overtime game in Texas sees the Houston Cougars pulling away from Texas Tech. A huge blowout win for Louisiana Lafayette over Rice, 66-17. Looking down the rest of the scores, FAU got a big win, as did Oklahoma State. There was a huge upset in New York City at NYCFC Arena, or NYCFC Stadium. St. John's in their FBS debut, beating Wisconsin 24-17. Meanwhile, Rhode Island also wins in their FBS debut over William and Mary. Villanova getting revenge for the upset win last year, or the upset loss last year to Penn, 65-7. And a remarkable blowout out west sees the number 18 New Mexico State Aggies pulling away from Utah State, 72-3. A good game out in Sydney wraps us up, 45-32. That should be Hawaii over Air Force. I believe that was a mistype. However, don't forget, there are some scores that happen technically tonight and tomorrow. We'll be talking those first and foremost next week on Week 2's show. Let's head down to... This is just the repeats. Let's head up to Upset Alert. These are some close games. We saw Kansas... What was that?
And for those who want to know about the remaining games, tonight we're supposed to have Clemson against Georgia Tech, and tomorrow it's going to be Kansas and Arizona playing in Las Vegas. And for those who want, Kansas against Arizona and Las Vegas. So for those who want to keep an update on them, go join the Discord.
Yeah. We'll link the Discord in the comments once we're done with the stream. We have some big upsets already. We saw Arizona State beat Utah, and we saw Louisville beat Indiana, and we saw Kansas State lose on the road to Purdue. We have a couple games that we think lined up could be a potential upset alert for a lot of these teams. How about number 12, North Carolina, heading on the road to Purdue? The Boilermakers did it once. Could they do it again? USC getting a chance to take down the Oregon Ducks. They were ranked pretty high last year eventually, but the Ducks but they had a game day matchup against the Ducks last year. Louisville and UCF, great matchup always, and a potential deciding game for the Conference USA. How about Michigan? I think they might have a tough time on the road in Illinois, especially seeing how well this team performed against a true contender like Missouri. Number 19, West Virginia, heading on the road of the backyard brawl to end the year against Pittsburgh. Always a tough game, no matter who's playing. I think number 14, LSU, currently the best team in the SEC, could have an issue with Georgia Tech. They have a new coach, Matt Muse, former Florida quarterback. And I think another game on that radar would be the number 4 Gophers, heading on the road to take on the BYU Cougars. We'll take a quick minute to talk about the top 25. We had big games shake things up, especially in the top 10. So there's going to be a lot of change. Let's start with the top 5. Stanford's still number 1. Michigan bumped up to number 2, and Louisville gets the number 3 spot. Baylor slips a little to number 4. They still got their win, and the top 5 is wrapped up with Minnesota. Danny, any thoughts about these teams?
Yeah, that Louisville was definitely the big one to jump, and even though Baylor barely won against Auburn, it was still a good quality win, and we got to see more about Minnesota, especially later on the road when they play against Michigan.
That Brown Jug, definitely a great matchup always. If you don't know how these polls work, we have 3 combined polls between Danny, myself, and our good friend DePigbear. My poll, I had Louisville all the way up at number 2. So I expect that this Louisville team will go far. Let's take a look at the next 5 up. We lost some teams in the shuffle. Number 6 is Northern Illinois. They were off this week, but they got a big win on week 0 against Holy Cross. Number 7 is Oregon, who got that win over Florida State. Number 8 is Rutgers, who I don't remember who they played this week. They were off this week, actually. They played Princeton last week. Pardon me.
Yep.
Number 9 was Utah. Pig Bear had them pretty high on his poll. Well, so they get bumped up a little. And number 10 is Boise State, big win over Idaho. Want to see more from that team, definitely. Danny, any thoughts on these five?
The Mountain West is really proving to be an elite conference, and to have two teams in the top 10 really shows it.
Yeah, definitely a very competitive conference. The big three in this conference are Utah, Boise, and as we'll see later, BYU. Who I think there are some teams that bubble under as well, namely a team like TCU, and potentially someone like Wyoming or San Diego State. But let's take a look at the next five. Number 11 is Virginia Tech, who got a win at a neutral site over VMI. The North Carolina Tar Heels are up next. Big win, or close win, over Charlotte, but it was just enough. Indiana falling to 13 after their loss to Louisville. Number 14, we have the LSU Tigers. And number 15, we wrap up with Tennessee, who got a good ranked win over the Syracuse Orange. Danny?
Yeah, that the ACC, their big hope is either Virginia Tech or North Carolina to make it in. So you better hope they rise up. And Indiana is still kind of in the running.
I could say the same with a team like with the SEC and teams like LSU and Tennessee. Though both the ACC and SEC have teams on the fringe still coming up. We'll take a look at the next five up. Number 16, Arizona State, who is off this week. Number 17, big win for New Mexico State over Utah State. But number 18, the Kansas State Wildcats, falling hard after their loss to the Boilermakers. Number 19, West Virginia. The Mountaineers got a good win this week. I don't remember who against.
Against Marshall.
It was against Marshall. Friends of Coble. And we wrap up the top 20 with another Mountain West team in BYU, who, even in spite of their loss against Stanford, played hard. Danny?
Yeah, that Kansas State dropped hard, and it was a really bad fall for them. And BYU, they're still surprising in the running for potentially a big bowl game.
Yeah, it's definitely a chance to just see how those big three of the Mountain West boil down. Keep in mind, the Mountain West is adopting divisions for the first time this year because they added 3 new teams in Montana, Southern Utah, and Eastern Washington. So for the first time, it'll not just be the best 2 teams. As we'll take a look at our final 5, we do have a new team joining this ranks, but we'll start with number 21, Clemson, number 22, Florida, number 23, Dave Show. All 3 got good wins. Number 24, Oklahoma State, returning from last week's poll. And number 25, finally making it in after Syracuse fell out, it's Illinois, who got the win last week over Missouri. Danny?
Illinois is definitely the one to watch out because they have that good quality win against Missouri. And this week, we're going to have a lot of ranked matches, which we're going to get to very, very soon.
Yeah, a lot of ranked matches. We'll go to the next 5. All 3 of us had Appalachian State somewhere on our polls after their win over South Carolina. We also had FAU, Syracuse, who dropped out this week. Missouri dropped out last week, and TCU wraps up our next 5 up. Anyone else you want to point to, Danny?
Yeah, I mean, there are several other teams to watch out, like UCF. They definitely could have a chance of coming in. And also maybe some other smaller teams who could be dark horses in their conferences. Mm-hmm. Maybe like Alabama could be a dark horse.
I could see Alabama being close in there. I could also see last year we saw a team boil up eventually got some talk about eventually being ranked. That was South Dakota when they surged to get a 10-win season in the Missouri Valley. We'll have to see what that conference is up to. Let's take a quick moment to talk about players of the week. The first player is not traditionally a player, but I have to shout out the Stanford defense. 8 sacks, 3 interceptions on the day against a very good BYU offense. My current pick for player of the week, the second one up, is Javari Johnson out of Boise State. The running back had 152 yards and 4 touchdowns. Another running back, Terrence Noel for Oregon, had 145 yards and 3 touchdowns in the Superdome against Florida State. And here's a name that you may have not considered, but this guy I could see becoming a dark horse candidate for player of the year when it's all said and done. This is Bobby Harris, the quarterback from Louisiana Lafayette. He was 24 of 30 for 305 pass yards and 4 touchdowns against the Rice Owls. This guy is the captain of the Louisiana Lafayette Raging Cajuns, a team who won their division last year in the Sun Belt, lost the title game to Florida Atlantic, but definitely watch these Raging Cajuns and Bobby Harris specifically. I think we have the Week 2 games to watch up next. Next, we have some midweek games as well. East Carolina heading out to Marshall to take on the Thundering Herd. On Thursday, we have Tulane, who is an SEC school here, taking on South Alabama, and number 3 Louisville in action against the Brown Bears. On Friday, we got 2 ranked teams. Southern Illinois heading on the road to take on number 4 Baylor, and Boise State, number 10, heading out to USF. On Saturday, big matchup for Army trying to prove themselves worthy of a top 25 spot against number 18 Kansas State. K-State hoping to stop the bleeding that last week caused. And number 2 Michigan on the road to NC State. Number 21 Clemson heading up to Athens to take on the Georgia Bulldogs. Ball State heading down to number 13 Indiana, another team trying to recoup. A ranked matchup between number 24 Oklahoma State and number 8 Rutgers. We have New Mexico State heading up to Miami to take on a red-hot Florida International Panthers. North Carolina heading at home. They got to take on those Boilermakers. A win for them against this team. A win for them against the Tar Heels. That surely gets them ranked, right? How about the Friends of Coal Bowl? Not the Friends of Coal Bowl, the Black Diamond Trophy. Number 19 West Virginia and number 11 Virginia Tech, as the Big East is hanging on by a thread. Arizona State's playing somebody. I don't know who that's saying they're playing. Danny?
Yeah, let me just pull out the little document.
While you get that, number 9 Utah hosts the Pac-10's USC Trojans. Number 6 Northern Illinois welcomes Southern Utah in, I believe, the Thunderbirds' first home game as an FBS team. How about Mississippi State? How about this ranked matchup? The Dave Show Truckers play their first home game against number 22 Florida. This is the first time in school history that they've played a ranked matchup they've played a ranked versus ranked game. And number 1 Stanford heading on the road at midnight to take on a very formidable Hawaii team. And then the last game I want to watch out for is our 2KU Saturdays game of the week. Next week, number 5 Minnesota heading on the road to take on the BYU Cougars at Lavelle Edwards in Provo, Utah. That stream will be on Saturday at 8:30. That should say the 10th. Don't forget to tune in for that. Definitely a lot to see over the coming weeks. Danny?
And then the games we always have to watch out for is whenever a ranked team goes on the road to an unranked team, especially that unranked team is a big rival. So we may see a bunch of upsets this week, and of course, our ranked matchups are always going to be a fun one to watch.
Definitely. So, I think
BYU here.
What are you saying?
And BYU here has got something to prove.
Mm-hmm.
BYU's got something to prove this week.
They had
show that their game against Stanford will be it's not just the exception.
It's crucial that they win these non-conference games. BYU, I could argue, has one of the toughest schedules in the country. They open with Stanford, they get Minnesota, and they still have to worry about Utah at the end of the year. And I'm pretty sure they still play Boise as well. If you can fact check me on that.
Yeah, BYU has got a super tough schedule.
Yeah.
After this game, they play against LSU at home, then they go to Georgia Tech.
That is so tough, actually.
They might be playing against 4 ranked opponents in the first 4 weeks of the season.
That could be true. And if they win all of those games.
Yep, and of course there's Boise State, there's Utah, both of them at home, and of course other games like at Utah State, Air Force, and more. So they have a toughie.
And I think to consider, if you beat Boise State and Boise State continues on the trajectory they're going, you'd have to play them again. You could beat them once. Can you beat them twice? That's more a reason to tune in, join our Discord, and keep an eye on these scores. Thank you all for watching today's stream. It's a bit rushed today, but we'll definitely be on the flow next time. Don't forget to tune in to 2KU Saturday on next Saturday to see this matchup between the Cougars and the Golden Gophers. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on Saturday.